You don't have to say a word. You don't have to do anything. And yet, they can't stop thinking about you. Because no contact isn't just about walking away. It's a psychological war. A game where the less you do, the more power you have. Most people think silence is just avoidance, that ignoring someone is simply a way to move on. But in reality, no contact is one of the most effective mind games ever played. It forces the other person into an emotional spiral. It makes them question everything they thought they knew. It plants a seed of obsession that only grows with time. Because when someone expects you to chase them, and you don't, it disrupts their entire sense of control. They start replaying every conversation, searching for clues. They wonder if they miscalculated, if they made a mistake. They convince themselves you're planning something, even when you're doing nothing at all. And that uncertainty, that silence, it becomes a prison they can't escape from. There was once a manipulator, someone who thrived on controlling others. They expected their target to beg, to plead, to react. But instead, the person disappeared. No final words, no explanations, just pure, unshakable silence. At first, the manipulator laughed, but then days passed, weeks, and suddenly they weren't laughing anymore. They were checking their phone, overanalyzing, obsessing, because the one thing they never expected, the one thing they couldn't handle, was being ignored. This is what makes no contact so powerful. It doesn't just remove you from their life, it traps them in a battle they can't win. In this video, we'll break down the psychological mind games behind no contact and why it's more powerful than you think. Why no contact triggers obsession. Disappearance creates obsession. When you were present, they took you for granted. They assumed you'd always be there. They believed they had control. But the moment you vanish, they start feeling something they never expected: loss. And loss creates value. Because the human mind is wired for scarcity. We want what we can't have. We obsess over what's missing. And when someone who once gave us attention suddenly goes silent, our brain does something dangerous. It makes them more important than they ever were. The scarcity effect is why people chase after what's gone. It's why they rethink every interaction. It's why they replay old memories in their head. It's why they suddenly want you the moment you stop wanting them. Because when something is always available, it loses its value. But the second it becomes rare, unavailable, out of reach, it becomes priceless. And this is where the obsession begins. Your silence leaves a gap, a story left unfinished. And the brain hates unfinished stories. It needs closure, it needs an explanation, it needs to understand why you disappeared. So it does what all minds do when faced with uncertainty. It starts filling in the blanks. They begin creating their own narrative. Did I make a mistake? Were they more important to me than I realized? Are they happier without me? And the more time that passes without answers, the deeper their obsession grows. Because the human brain cannot tolerate an open loop. They need to know, they need a response, they need something to hold on to. But you've given them nothing. And that lack of control, that inability to get a reaction from you, it drives them insane. Before they dictated the pace, they pulled the strings. They knew exactly how to push your buttons. But now, the game has flipped. You are the one in control, because while they're obsessing over you, trying to understand, trying to reconnect, trying to get your attention, you're already gone. This is why ghosting is so powerful. Not because it's an attack, not because it's cruel, but because it leaves them with nothing to hold on to. And when someone has nothing, they create their own suffering. But this is just the beginning. Let's talk about the emotional roller coaster they go through during no contact. the emotional roller coaster, what happens in their mind. No contact doesn't just make them miss you, it forces them through an emotional spiral, one that they can't control. At first, they don't feel anything. Maybe they even feel relief. They tell themselves they'll be back. They just need time. This is just temporary. This is the denial phase. They assume you'll break first, that eventually you'll reach out. And as long as they believe that, they feel secure. But then something happens. Days pass, weeks pass, and you're still gone. That's when the second stage kicks in, confusion and self-doubt. They start questioning everything. Wait, why haven't they reached out? Are they actually serious this time? Did I underestimate them? They start analyzing every past interaction, replaying old conversations, looking for clues. And with each passing day of silence, the doubt grows. Now, their emotions start shifting. What started as confidence turns into panic, and when the panic sets in, it triggers obsession. This is when they lose control. They check their phone constantly, waiting for a message. They start stalking your social media, looking for signs. They even create fake scenarios in their mind, convincing themselves that you must be planning something. Because the brain can't handle uncertainty. It needs an answer. It needs an explanation. And when it doesn't get one, it spirals into obsession. They begin craving closure, but you're giving them nothing. That's why manipulators always come back the moment you stop caring, because they need to feel in control again. But this time, they have no control, and when the obsession sets in, that's when no contact becomes truly powerful. The power shift when they realize they lost control. No contact isn't just about cutting communication. It's about flipping the power dynamic permanently. At first, they feel nothing, maybe even relief. They tell themselves they'll give in. They always come back. This is just a phase. They still think they're in control. They assume you'll break, that eventually you'll crave their attention. But then something happens. Days pass, weeks pass, and you're still silent. That's when the panic sets in. They start chasing. The moment they realize they can't reach you, their mindset flips. The same person who dismissed you, now they're checking their phone, waiting. The same person who ignored you, now they're watching your every move. The same person who thought they had the upper hand, now they're chasing after you. Because what they once controlled is now out of reach. And the human brain, it obsesses over what it can't have. The mystery effect. People aren't drawn to what they understand. They're drawn to the unknown. Before they had access to you, they knew your thoughts, your emotions, your reactions. Now, they have nothing. And that silence, it destroys them. They start creating scenarios in their head. Are they over me? Did they find someone else? Were they always stronger than I thought? And the longer the silence lasts, the more desperate they become. Because the less they know, the more they need to know. Regret and guilt. When they can't pull you back in, they do the one thing they swore they'd never do. They start doubting themselves. Every toxic person, every manipulator, every person who thought they had control, now questions everything. They replay the past. They search for clues. They start believing maybe, just maybe, they were the ones who lost. And when that realization sets in, they try to reach out, testing you, trying to see if they still have a hold on you, but this time, it's too late. You're no longer reacting. You're no longer waiting. You're no longer the person they thought they controlled. And that realization destroys them. But to make no contact work, you have to avoid the common mistakes that ruin its effect. Common no contact mistakes, why most people fail. No contact is only powerful when executed perfectly. Most people fail, not because no contact doesn't work, but because they sabotage themselves. They give in too early. They seek closure that doesn't exist. They leave the door open just enough for the other person to walk back in, and just like that, they lose all the power they gained. Breaking it too soon. The biggest mistake? Caving in before the shift happens. At first, no contact feels empowering. But then, doubt creeps in. The silence feels heavy. You start wondering, should I just reach out once? And that's exactly what they want. Because the moment you break no contact, you tell them everything they need to know. That you were waiting, that you were struggling, that they still have control. And just like that, the power shifts back to them. Seeking closure. People think closure is about getting answers. It's not. It's about seeking validation from the person who already disrespected you. You want them to acknowledge their mistakes. You want them to feel remorse. You want them to give you a reason why. But deep down, you don't need closure because their actions already gave you the answer. If someone truly valued you, you wouldn't need to question it. The need for closure is just another way of saying, I still need their approval to move on. And the moment you chase that, you lose. Leaving the door open. No contact only works when it's absolute. Not when you secretly check their social media. Not when you respond just to be polite. Not when you keep the possibility open for them to return. Because if they think you're still there, waiting in the background, they'll never experience true loss. And if they never feel like they lost you, they'll never value you. No contact isn't about making them miss you temporarily. It's about making them realize they lost access to you permanently. That's what triggers regret. That's what forces them to chase. And that's what shifts all the power back into your hands. But if you do no contact the right way, the final stage is where the real power begins. The ultimate silent revenge, becoming the one they can't have. The greatest revenge, it's not anger, it's not confrontation, it's silence. Because silence creates loss. And when someone realizes they can never have you again, that's when the real pain begins. At first, they thought no contact was temporary, that you were just trying to make a point, that eventually you'd crack, that the door was still slightly open. But then they see it. They see you moving forward. They see you thriving. They see you completely detached from them. And suddenly, they understand. They didn't just lose you. They lost their ability to affect you. They lost their ability to control you. They lost the version of you that would have once given them a second chance. And that realization, it breaks them. Emotional detachment. Nothing haunts someone more than realizing they have no power over you anymore. No reaction, no emotion. Nothing, because before they could trigger you. They knew exactly what to say to make you doubt yourself. They knew how to manipulate you into chasing them. They knew you cared. But now, you've detached. You don't check their social media. You don't wonder if they miss you. You don't even think about them. And for them, that is the most painful punishment of all. The silent glow-up. Then they start noticing something else. You didn't just move on, you leveled up. Your confidence is back. Your energy is different. Your life is improving without them. And the worst part, they can see it, but they can't reach you. That's when regret hits at full force. They start wondering, how did I let them go? Were they always this strong? Did I make the biggest mistake of my life? And the answer? Yes. The too late realization. By the time they realize what they lost, it's already over. They can try to reach out. They can try to test you. They can try to make their way back in, but they'll find nothing. No door left open, no chance for redemption, no way back into your life, because they weren't just a temporary loss for you. You were the permanent loss for them. And that's when the obsession turns into suffering. They thought they won. They thought they could come back any time. They thought they could control when the story ends. But now, they finally understand. You were the one who ended it, and at this point, you're no longer just avoiding them. You've taken back full control. No contact isn't about making them suffer. It's about making yourself untouchable. You don't need revenge. You don't need closure. You don't need to prove anything. Because the second you walk away, you already won. They expected a reaction. They expected you to break. They expected to keep control. But instead, you disappeared. And now they're trapped in a cycle they can't escape. Their mind can't let go. Because no contact doesn't just make them miss you, it makes them obsessed. They can't stop thinking about you. Not because they love you, not because they care, but because they lost control over you. And the human brain? It hates unanswered questions. It hates unfinished stories. It hates losing something it once owned. And that's why they keep coming back. Not because they deserve you, but because they can't handle the silence. No contact flips the power dynamic. When you were engaging, they had control. When you were explaining, they had control. When you were waiting for closure, they had control. But the moment you vanished, you took it all back. And now, you are the one in control. The biggest mistake? Breaking no contact, giving in, letting them know you still care. Because the second they realize you're still emotionally invested, they win. But when you fully detach, you don't just make them regret losing you. You become the person they can never have again. And that is the ultimate power. Summary of key takeaways. No contact doesn't just make them miss you, it makes them obsessed. The brain can't handle loss without an explanation, which is why they can't stop thinking about you. When you disappear, you take back every ounce of power they once had over you. The biggest mistake is breaking no contact or letting them know you still care. When you fully detach, you don't just make them regret losing you, you become unreachable. Now it's your turn. Have you ever used no contact? What was the result? Comment below and let's discuss.